Hi guys, Jaryd Krause, host of the Buying Online Businesses podcast. And in this episode, I speak to Charley Valher from Valher Media. And he's bought websites, he's sold websites, he has multiple online businesses, and is a seven-figure income earner. In this podcast episode, Charley and I talk about what risks are involved with buying websites and scaling them. And I cover four things that I believe are risky about online businesses, buying them and scaling them, and how to minimize and eliminate those. And Charley covers four of his as well. And we talk about a couple of stories, our successes, our failures, and what we've learned through our online business journey. So if you're looking at buying your first website business, or you have a website business, or you're looking at building your portfolio and you want to minimize your risk when you're scaling your website businesses and when you're buying them as well, make sure you don't miss out on this episode, because there's so many profound lessons that we've learned in how to minimize our risk when scaling and buying website businesses. Enjoy. Today's episode is brought to you by Investors Club. Investors Club is a paid members-only marketplace for serious buyers interested in proven businesses that aren't listed anywhere else, because sellers sign a 2-month exclusivity agreement to only list with the membership. Now, there's also no purchase fees or commission, meaning the seller nor the buyer ever pay commission in any deal. Each listing has next level metrics to make due diligence far less time consuming, making it quicker for you to seal the deal. With a membership, you have access to a no fee escrow service, and they have great Q&A support available for both buyers and sellers. I'm a member myself, and a lot of thought and effort has gone into this service. However, there are a limited amount of seats available for this membership, so go and check them out at their URL, which is investors.club. That's investors.club. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Buying Online Businesses podcast. And today we get to speak to Charley from Valher Media. He's got his podcast business, Outsourcing Angels. He's got a lot happening. And the reason I love talking to you, Charley, is because you bought a couple of businesses last year and you've been in the space for quite a while. Thanks for jumping on.
Thank you so much for having me. And I just want to give a massive shout out. A few people in your community and online have just sent me messages from previous episodes of the show and just said that, maybe a point was helpful, or they enjoyed the content, or they enjoyed my ravishingly good looks. And all of that is appreciated. So thank you to everyone who did reach out. I really do. And thank you, of course, to you, Jaryd, for having me on the show again.
Yeah, while we're there, thanks to everybody in the community. It seems like on a weekly basis that we get a shout out, especially for when you're on, and then some other podcasts as well, just the amount of knowledge they get and feedback and points and learning, and just that on top of the community. I think it's a really good combination for everyone. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Charley. So another theme that I've been noticing, especially coming into 2020, is people want to not be so averse to risk, right? They want to minimize their risk, especially in this website space. We've seen a lot of things unfold, at the end of 2019 and especially into 2020. So let's chat about how can us as website owners ensure that we're minimizing our risk by being an owner of a site, and how can we also look out for risk when we're looking at buying a site? So I've gone through and I've got a couple of points, and I know that you said you got a couple of points as well. So how about we just go through them and see what we come up with? And hopefully I have no doubt it's going to be valuable, because just me talking about one of these points has been a big lesson, not just for me, but everybody else in the community. So
still, man, I think it's a really powerful conversation. And just to really chime in on your point, I mean, I won't name them on this podcast, but we've seen a really big player in this industry effectively collapse. I think it's really, really surprised a lot of people that a company so big could actually have this unfold with the resources they have, the experience they have. And then to our point, something you and me we've discussed before, is there's companies within the marketplace at the moment that have attempted to do things like funds or attempted to acquire sites, and it's gone terribly sideways. So what I'm really happy about in this conversation is that we're talking about the risks. I think it's too easy to get excited by the upside. I think it's way too easy to be biased. And I think it's particularly important to pay attention to the changing landscape. So what a conversation to have.
Yeah.
Now, Jaryd, I reckon we start with you this time. We normally start with me, but I would love to know, like, you know, the way we've done these episodes in the past is a bit of back and forth and discussing points, but I normally get the kickoff. Let's do you. What's your number one point in this conversation?
Good call. All right. I want to get to my number one point before, so I'm glad that you brought up what has happened in the industry and one of the big players. And I think it's not just with the funds where people come unstuck, but it's also people that are buying just one business and it may be their first business or buying their second business. And I think a huge part of that is because we get so excited by the returns that are being made. And sometimes we forget that the high return that can be made is correlated with the amount of risk as well. And especially when you go away and stack up business on business and in something into a fund, then it can erupt a lot worse than if you just have one site or one business. And that's why I love to talk about the risks and love to tell people in my community, hey, like buying a website or any investment is a risk, but it's just understanding them and not like sugarcoating them and making them look, hey, it's actually okay. I can deal with this risk if it happens, which is silly. You should definitely understand it straight away.
We have to put a caveat on this. The biggest risk you can take is doing nothing.
Yeah.
Like that is the absolute, and maybe I just stole point one. No, I didn't mean to.
You didn't, but
life is a risk. There's always risks, but it's like what you're willing to take on. But back over to you and your point one.
Yeah, cool. So my point one is something that I've seen a lot of people struggle with. I've struggled with it myself in my business and other businesses, is having a business that's reliant on one platform. So platform sensitivity. And that could be from any platform. It could be Google. A lot of people probably thinking content sites, they can be wiped out by Google, like many people did get wiped a bit of traffic off their site last year. But it's not just Google and it's not just YouTube traffic. Last year, we've seen Pinterest as well. A lot of people were heavily reliant on Pinterest traffic in 2019. And I know that their algorithm's been changing, but also like not just the algorithms, but like the platform in Facebook can change or Instagram can change. And I've been caught out with Facebook myself personally. And I think it's just dangerous when you're just relying on one. And it can be a good combination to have, if you're using paid traffic, use Google ads and Facebook ads, or YouTube ads and Facebook ads, or Instagram and Google ads, instead of just using one. Have it split across, because if one gets affected, then you can already have some data to lean on the other platform that's working well, and throwing some of those resources over to that platform. And that's the same with Google and Bing and Yahoo and whatever it is start tracking what's working on each one to be able to ensure that you optimize your content or whatever you're putting out there for those platforms particularly.
Well, you could almost guarantee it that every platform, so all the social platforms, the web platforms, like they're all going to change. So you could almost guarantee if you're invested in one that change might not be in your favor.
Well, change is inevitable. If we're going back to life, change is inevitable. And if you can't evolve, then you're going backwards. So that's my point. I think just being like one source of traffic, one source of income, it can be dangerous to your business. What about you, Charlie? Bring up your first point.
I love that point, Jaryd. I really do. And I think it's a really strong one. So Spencer, you sent me this question earlier about risks and things to think about. I got to think of one that's probably, I'm sure every one of these points has affected us personally. Otherwise, we wouldn't consider them risks.
Certainly.
The one that's probably hurt me the most in the last 5 years is swimming out of the lane. Like I have a skill set and a team and a resource that are really good at a few things. So there's certain types of businesses and niches we are really strong at. And then there's others that we've tried to expand into where we didn't quite understand the market, or we didn't quite understand the nuances of the product or what it was. And every time I've gone out of that sweet spot, that circle, it has not gone well. So I've gotten a lot better at kind of putting that filter through or expanding that circle much more slowly. But I think for a lot of people, it's like, effectively all the business models work, but getting good at one of them to an area and understanding where your area of competency is so you can do better in that style of business would have served me a lot better across the last 5 years.
Yeah, hugely. Me too as well. I mean, I just think back and go, imagine if I had have gotten to podcasting a lot earlier instead of getting into content writing and writing blog posts. And because my skill set, like I did learn a lot about copywriting and get good at writing stories and blogs and stuff like that. But my skill set is certainly better in podcasting. And I think that's the same with everybody, is just stick to what you're good at, stick to what you know. And if you don't know what you, especially with these first time buyers, if you don't know what you're going to be good at, stick to what feels best as well. Like, especially a lot of people come to me, Charlie, and say, oh, what's the best type of business model that I should buy? And it's dependent on the person and what feels right. And I can, narrow it down within a 5-minute conversation for somebody just by asking some questions, not getting too analytical, but seeing what feels right. And that, I think that's sticking with that and trying to focus and build up your weaknesses. It just doesn't help, right? You're trying to work on something that it shouldn't be driving the business.
Yeah, I shouldn't be allowed near e-commerce. Right? I'm going to say it. It's not my sweet spot. Logistics is not been something that I've excelled in. I haven't had people on my team that excel in that, so it's been a real nightmare for us. But if we go to content-driven businesses as a unit and in the niches we understand, we just have the opportunity to crush it over and over again. So to your point, not focusing on the weaknesses, just doubling down on where we win.
Yes, swimming in your lane, doing what you're good at. Awesome. Well, I'm going to bring up my next point, and it's similar to my last point, but has a bit of deviation to it. And whereas my last point was not staying on and using and being reliant on just one platform, to add to that and to bolt to that is to stay up to date with the algorithms of each platform. And that you could stay up to date with that algorithm yourself personally by learning the skill set, or you could hire a professional who could mentor you or could, guide you as those changes happen within each platform. I think that's really important because, say, for example, you've got a content site and you're putting a lot of content out there on Google, and then you're also getting that transcribed or you're making it into a video format as well, and you put on YouTube and different areas. Say, for example, Google hits you. If you've got a video with that content, say, doing really, really well on YouTube, which could be a slight deviation. I know it's Google owned, but could be a slight deviation from how content's showing up in the actual algorithm on Google, then you could definitely rely on that traffic in YouTube as well. So understanding both YouTube and Google, or Google and Facebook, or any of those, I think that's really important, because it's not just good enough to, all right, cool, I'm on these 2 or 3 different platforms. It's no point being on them if you don't know how they work.
It's a really interesting point. I mean, even I must admit, I read Search Engine Journal. I do definitely read that. And I think SEO Roundtable is probably another one that's good in that Google camp. Anything, and I'm just mentioning a few resources that I use. I think other people will be interested as well.
Thanks.
Anything by Brian Dean from Backlinko, I think, is really good. And then anything from Stefan Spencer is also phenomenal on SEO. I quite enjoy all of them. But I'm curious, though, because if I'm being honest, that's not actually how I stay up to date the most. How I would stay up the date the most is hanging around people who are trying things. It tends to be that it's for example, even you today have sent me something where it's oh, I think this is working. And it's always been those little conversations that have driven where I'm paying attention to, or what to avoid, or, hey, I'm having this problem. Is everyone else having this problem?
Yeah, definitely. That comes back to why the community is so valuable, and being in the space with other people is that you can ask questions and see and test out what other people are doing, see if it's working for them as well. Or if you tried it, then you could share it, and that goes backwards and forwards. And that definitely, I noticed that when I speak to different SEOs, I've spoken to Stefan, he's coming on the summit, or he was on the summit. Then we've also got Sam McRoberts, seeing what they're all testing, because each SEO is doing things differently and testing things differently. They may stick to one, on-page SEO, or a different type of off-page SEO and different strategy towards it. I think it's really you're right, like is making sure that you're in a community of people that are growing in the same area that you want to grow.
Absolutely. Just to, I suppose, dig a bit deeper there, it's funny that you should bring that up about like they've got their own flavors. I think what a lot of new people start with, and I say this because I struggled with this, is you think there's like one way to do internet marketing and you're either the right way or the wrong way.
I used to think that.
I mean, isn't it funny when you get into it? But you kind of realize that good marketing or good internet marketing for sites particularly is more like being a chef. Like there's so many different ways to create a great meal.
Yeah.
Like different ingredients, different styles, different equipment, and all of them can effectively get you to creating a really great meal. But it's like that illusion of, right, there's only one way to cook a meal with one certain type of ingredients. And that's the only way to get success. And I think it holds people up and they're probably closer than they realize.
Yeah, for sure. It really does. It held me up because I just stuck to it and thought, all right, blogging forever. Like, that's all I need to do is just focus on blogging. And I didn't even explore like what comes back to what you were saying is sticking to your lane, swimming in your lane. Like it didn't even explore what I could be good at. So I think that's a really good point that you brought up as your first one. Let's bring in your second one.
All right, so we're going to go to the next one here. I'm going to shift gears a little bit here, but I think one way we can massively increase our chances and decrease our risk is spending more time on research.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, you and me are researching a project at the moment, and the younger version of myself would have jumped headfirst in already. Like I would have had would have been sitting there thinking of like, what's that quote from Richard Branson? When a good opportunity knocks, you take it and you work out how to do it later. And I just think that is the worst advice. I'm sorry, Richard. I love so much about what you do, but that is terrible advice for a lot of people.
That's great. It's great because there's so like, I listen to some things billionaires say and I'm like, what the actual F? Because it doesn't suit everyone. But taking your time back to the research thing is like so what we're working on is like 2 years ago, it would have already in like, if it was just me, it would have already been set up and functioning and probably not functioning well. And then the thing that would have happened in, the future of that, if I did it too quick, then it's going to crash and burn. Yeah, it's a great point, is really the research. It's the same as like when somebody goes, I'm going to buy a website business, they just go in and go, oh, okay, cool. I've heard content sites are the best because it's for less risk, which isn't necessarily the case all the time. And they go and buy one. And it's like, I don't even know how to write copy. I don't even know like what a good copywriter is or what a good storyteller is. It's just they haven't done the research.
We should both be proud right now, Jaryd, because with our personality types and the 2 year ago version of ourselves would have done this project already. But I mean, you've got to strike that balance. I will preface with this. There are people that are just pure analysis, paralysis. They've researched the world out of it and it actually prevents them from doing anything. And if you're in that camp, like you do need to take some action or figure out why you're not confident enough to take some action from that. And then you've got these on the other side of it, to your point, like cowboys. No research, no diligence, nothing, and they just buy something and kind of hope it works out. What I'm kind of thinking about is it's more of a spectrum. So on 1, you've got no research, and then 10, so much research you do nothing. In the previous version of me was like a 3 or a 4. Like I know enough about it where it's like, sweet, I can see the upside, let's go. Where I want to be more of a 7 or an 8, and I feel that's where I've been able to operate from more recently. And I'm seeing a lot better results from that. And like the project we're considering, details to be confirmed soon, guys, secret. But I feel like we're going to have a lot more success with that because of how thorough we have been with that. And it's kind of interesting. Just one more on that is like sometimes I talk to people in the community and it's like they might do due diligence on 10 sites and then buy one. And I'm like, I think 50 would have been better.
Yeah.
Like you really would have got the runs on the board.
Yeah, it's the same when I've spoken to property coaches and it's like the people that buy the first one, they just don't, they just haven't learnt much about the space. Like just that I say doing due diligence is probably the best thing you can do to learn how to buy a business. And the more you do it, the better you get. And it's not just because like you're getting good at the due diligence, but you're learning all the different businesses and the different business models, and you're speaking to all these different owners and how they're growing the business, what they suck at, what's worked for them. And that's like the best education in itself. And it's the best second order consequence of like doing due diligence. Yeah, but I love that you said people get the paralysis by analysis, because I do know people that do get in that camp as well. And it's a tricky, happy medium that you have to play.
Awesome, man. Well, let's dig into your next point. What have you got on your list here?
I love what I've learnt in business over the last sort of 2 years is where I've had such a competitive streak, and I just wanted to dominate and just leave everyone else behind, which is silly because it's lonely and boring. But I've flipped it and changed that competitiveness into collaboration and learning how to collaborate with people. And that's, one of the reasons that we became good mates and have got something coming up. And then also other things that are in the pipeline and things that I've already set up previously is because I've learned that collaborating really helps not just me grow, but everybody else. And it's a funner journey. But what we're talking about here in this podcast is actual risk, and having a collaboration with somebody that you can help them grow their business and they're helping you grow your business. That's another revenue stream or traffic stream or whatever you have to help you grow that business that you may have just purchased or you already own. It helps decrease the risk because you've got that there to buffer any downturns that you may have in the market.
So just to kind of lean into that, and I suppose to repeat, and you can confirm here, you're perceiving that the more you do alone is more risky. Like isolation is a risk here.
From what I just said with the community thing and all of that, I believe so, because you don't know what you don't know.
I've actually never thought about that before. Like just the dangers of being alone, like how limited you could be. And I'll tell you a funny story even about, hanging around the wrong crowd. I used to live in an area that's quite aged, right? So it's an older population, Brighton in Victoria. And there was a gym there. And basically I was the youngest person by maybe 15 years.
So you were literally setting the bar.
Oh, absolutely. And I used to remember thinking like there was this calf raise machine and I used to just max it out. And I remember thinking like, I'm killing it. And then eventually I changed gyms and I've gone into this new gym and I've lifted that weight in this new gym where there's like, honestly, people that could eat me. And I remember thinking like I maxed out that machine and I thought it was like, oh, this is awesome. Like I've really at this level, I'm an elite athlete. Come on, guys. And then when I went into that gym, I put that weight on, did some sets, and then someone came over and basically doubled that weight as a warm-up. And I was like, oh, it's like the world had changed purely on the influence of the people around you.
Yeah.
So I think it's incredibly powerful to think about that.
I had a mentor that used to say to me, he said, Jaryd, it's not just, the willpower. That's really important. Willpower is really important. But environment can be stronger than willpower. If you put yourself in the right environment, that can propel you a lot quicker than what your willpower and gusto could. Yeah. So that's my third one. Let's bring in your third one.
All right. I'm going to go to my next one here, which is having people that will tell you why you're wrong.
Great.
So
I love this.
I love how many are feeding into the idea of getting around other people. I really like that in general. But to the point, and it's like I have numerously tried to really get to the point now where I've got people around me who aren't going to sugarcoat things. And whether these are mentors, friends, like the people in your life, if you really have people that care about you to the point where they'll tell you why you're wrong instead of agreeing with you or trying to keep you safe, I think they are incredibly powerful people to have around you and incredibly powerful conversations to have. So, doing research and stuff is one thing, but of course our bias will kick in. Having friends around you that will just are yes men and will just say, yeah, that's a great idea to anything, super dangerous. And then also having people around you that will basically just want to keep you safe and tell you why everything's a bad idea. Hint, hint, family members.
I have a story of a family member on this one. And I always go to that person. It's my dad. And I go to him with anything. And he's just so good at picking holes in things. He can be quite negative in his approach to some things. And especially, wanting to keep me safe, same as family and stuff like that. But I can also take that with a grain of salt. And that's why I do go to him, because I'm like, can you just pick the crap out of this to see what I'm not seeing? And I think that's really important. But also, like you said, with friends and family, I think not just, this is coming back to being around the right people, and that's minimizing a risk. But when you come to a point and having to pick holes at something, you want somebody who is better at you or higher, like has achieved more success in a certain area that you're looking to do something, that can actually pick holes in something that you may have never seen before. I love the book that you recommended me, Charlie, is The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunnington. And
Cunningham is his name.
Yeah, and he says, what do I not see? And that's one of his questions that he's asked all of the time. And knowing to be able to go to the right people to find that, it's huge.
Yeah, it rings home for me in so many ways, that point around the person who's basically willing to have the opposing view and understand the things. And the measure to make it even better, if that person has achieved what you're trying to achieve, even better, because they're spotting those fires or potential hurdles along the way.
Yeah, and it may have happened to them already, Probably has, if they've definitely achieved success in that area.
Absolutely. So what's your next point here, Jaryd?
Okay, so my last one is one that I really hold highly, and that's because a lot of people just forget how important product or niche is, and they just go, oh, well, it's working, I'm going to buy this business, and they can just really come unstuck. And so my next point is that to either minimize your risk when you're buying a site or when you own a site and you're growing it, is to ensure that you're in a space that's an evergreen space or have an evergreen product. And I'll give you an example here. So say, for example, you bought a business that was selling, can you remember those, we talked about this with my friends yesterday, can you remember those power bands that used to keep you like stable? Like keep you balanced? I'm
laughing. Yes, I think I bought one.
And it was just a complete gimmick, basically. And if you had bought a business like that, like especially when it was at its peak, that's not an evergreen business. Like, it's a fatty business and it's not going to be around. And how do you segue and evolve from that as well? So say even you did buy something that was working at the time, or it's fatty, but is it an evergreen business? Is it going to be something you can keep selling by evolution and changing your product? Because the market's needs change. They're not always going to need the same thing. So I think it's quite a risk to buy something that is not in an evergreen niche that can be evolved, or have an evergreen product that can be evolved. On top of that, something that's not easily replicable. Like if I'm selling drink bottles, anybody can just not even need to go to China. They can get drink bottles. There you go. I've got so many drink bottles.
Product placement. Do you know what? I heard this crazy thing as well about if you were to develop a drink bottle and put it on Kickstarter, let's say, that it would be ripped off and in production before your Kickstarter is even finished.
Because there's people out there with 10 mil and they just go, well, that's a great idea. And they've got a marketing team, an SEO team behind them. Why would you create something that's, or get into a business that's easily replicable? So I think that's a combo. My last one's a bit of a combo where it's evergreen and non-replicable to prevent risk.
Well, I think, Warren Buffett's famous, he looks for moats or businesses that are very, very defendable. And that's why he's been such a heavy investor in a company like Coca-Cola. And it's sage advice through the whole section, isn't it? So if you're looking at a site that's drop shipping the same shit as everyone else, like that is absolutely not a good idea to buy. But if
especially if it's out of Alibaba. I mean,
absolutely. But if you've got something where it's like you own your own product, you own your own brand, it's defendable, doing something unique, but then solving an evergreen problem, like your chance of success is through the roof. You've avoided so much risk. Hugely.
It's just, I've seen people buy businesses or go down that route, and it's scary. It's just, I get scared for them. Yeah, think twice before you purchase a business. And also think twice before you bring out a new product line or a range, or how you're actually going to evolve your product or service to actually suit the market needs.
Absolutely. I like that a lot, Jaryd.
So let's cap it off.
Oh, I've got one more.
Yeah, with your last one. Let's cap it off with that.
Oh, this is cap it off. I thought we were capping it off as the conclusion.
No.
Well, lucky for me then. All right, I've thought about this one from here, and like, ultimately, there's something in time that has worked as the ultimate risk reduction tool of all time. And I'm hyping this up a little bit, so get on board, everyone, as you feel me here. There's something that's universally been able to solve problems and reduce risk in pretty much every area we've spoken about so far.
Ooh.
And that is cash. Like, it's funny how many problems and risks can be solved with cash. So for example, your site runs into a trouble and you need to hire an expert to solve that problem. Cash solves that. If I need to come and join Jaryd's community so I can get around people to see how they're doing sites and get involved in, making good decisions, cash will solve that. If I want to, if I've made a bad decision and I need to pay my bills, cash will solve that. And I think something every business owner can do is getting better at holding a good cash reserve so that they have that emergency fund to deal with problems when they come up, not if they come up.
Because they will come up.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know, I've been, in my 10 years now, Jaryd, I'm practically a veteran of internet marketing. Godfather status. No,
so aged.
Yeah, but I tell you now, I still get problems. I would have thought I would have worked it out by now. It doesn't mean I'm not making money, because I am. I want to close that, but it's like the problems don't stop, and cash is the thing that has time proven to be able to solve that.
Yeah, as a story with, I had a fun time with Facebook ads, and just, I was killing it. I was just making a lot of money with Facebook ads and doing really, really well. And this is one of my things of the platform sensitivity, is that things went south, and that was due to not my ads changing, just the algorithm changing and what they wanted to put in front of people. And I tried to develop that, and it took me a lot of time, and I ended up getting rid of team. I was at risk at this point. And if I hadn't had the cash reserves to go, all right, I'm going to, go a whole new route or do a whole new different thing, then my business would have been out of business, or, I could have been worse. Like, the cash really does solve so many problems. And I love that that's our last one, Charley, because it's really important. Like, I think a good thing for people to understand is that when they're buying a website, like, I was actually speaking to my best mate yesterday. He's like, I'm going to buy a site. And I'm like, how much have you got? He's told me X amount. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, you're not going to spend all of that. And he's like, yeah, I know. I said, well, that's why that is important, is so you can understand not just like, oh, you've got a bit of money in case you need to pay for something personally. It's not just that, but you have a bit of money in case you need to rectify things that may happen or will happen to the business when they happen, which is what you say. And then also the cash reserves. Like, there's different approaches where people say you should have 3 months worth of expenses or a year worth of expenses. There's very different approaches to that, and how you want to do that is different to everyone. But that's such a good one to end with, Charley. I couldn't have thought a better one myself, honestly.
If this microphone wasn't on a stand, I would be dropping it right now. Yeah, but my biggest fear is that I won't be able to pay my team. And if can't pay my team, can't get work done. So having a reserve just hedges that so heavily.
Yeah, we've seen something happen, recently, where there have been people that we know that haven't been able to be paid because they've done services by something that went south. And that's just really, really bad, right? It's just inhumane. The captain should go down with the ship, not the captain abort, and then just good luck to everybody else.
Scumbag. Oh, sorry. I'm not. You might have to edit out. I've just got a bit of a cold, Jaryd. Might have to edit that out.
We don't edit anything here. No, that's a great one to finish off with, Charley. And yeah, cash is king. So thanks so much for jumping on. Where can people go away and find out more about you?
Awesome. So you can head to charleyvalher.com is my personal brand website. You can have a look what I'm getting up to on there. Valher Media is the podcasting business you can have a look at from there. And of course, I'm in your wonderful community, Jaryd. So if anyone's in there and listening to this, if you enjoyed this episode, say hello. I enjoy hearing from you all. If you're not in that community and you do want to connect, join the community.
Everybody that is listening, thanks so much for listening. We talked about risk today. If you want to minimize your risk, it's so important to do so when you're buying a site. Get some of my free resources. I have a due diligence resource to help you get past that, website evaluator tool, a couple of case studies, and just go to my site in the free resources section there. You can find all that. People that did actually like this show that aren't in the community, let us know via feedback on the app. Just give us a star rating, hopefully a good one, and ensure that you also let us know what you liked about it, so I can bring more guests like Charley to the show, because people are reaching out saying Charley's great. We're getting him back more and more because of that feedback. So we love feedback. Please go away and give us a review, and we'll speak to you guys on the next one.